Hendrick Motorsports will field an Xfinity Series team for the first time since 2009, and Justin Marks says that if Jimmie Johnson attempts to double, he will allow him to drive the Project 91 Trackhouse car. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We've got a ton of NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight on those really quickly. We're going to go ahead and start with paint scheme news and sponsorship news first. So let's jump on those really quickly. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is Justin Carroll's 2022 Carroll's Automotive scheme that received this weekend at Worldwide Technology Raceway. Now, Justin Carroll currently does not have any owner's points. He will have to qualify into the race. He will not be able to rely on owner's points to make the show. This paint scheme is all right, in my opinion. Cool to see if Carroll's Automotive is stepping up. I think that's a company that the family runs for. So very solid, and I'm looking forward to seeing the racetrack this weekend at Worldwide Technology Raceway. The next main scheme we're taking a look at is Tyler Reddick's 2022 sheet scheme that we're going to see later this year at Pocono. I think this paint scheme looks really solid in my opinion, and it's really cool to see that Sheets, which is a Pennsylvania-based company, which is run from that Pocono area, is going to be sponsored. I think it looks pretty solid, and I'm looking forward to seeing on the racetrack this weekend, not this weekend, later this year at Pocono. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Alex Abay's 2022 LaRue scheme that received this weekend at Portland. I think this paint scheme looks pretty cool in my opinion. I love that they've changed it up because I think they've had different types and varieties of the LaRue scheme. So I think it looks solid, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing on the racetrack this weekend at Portland. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Chase Purdy's 2022 ASIN scheme that we're going to be seeing, I believe, this weekend at Worldwide Technology Raceway. I actually love this paint scheme. It looks very similar to the old school, like 16 colors they used to run back in the day, which I think all look really solid. I think this paint scheme looks really good in my opinion. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Tyler Hill's 2022 Capulus Hair Club scheme that we'll see this weekend at Worldwide Technology Raceway. There's really not much to say here. It's very similar to the other Capulus Hair Club schemes that he's had in the past, in the last couple times he's raced. It looks good, though. Looking forward to seeing the racetrack this weekend at Worldwide Technology. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Austin's 2022 Alice Menard scheme that we'll see this weekend at Worldwide Technology Raceway. I think it looks pretty solid in my opinion, very similar to other Menard schemes that we've seen. It's got a different branding on the front of it, which I think looks good, and it will not be very difficult to spot at the racetrack this weekend. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Parker Kligerman's 2022 Scott Credit Union scheme we're going to be seeing this weekend at Worldwide Technology Raceway. Really awesome to be a Scott Credit Union, which is a company that I've known really since the beginning when I was born, is going to be sponsored. Really awesome to see that. And I think the paint scheme actually looks really great. And it's great to see a Parker Kligerman is driving for Rickware this weekend in the Cup Series. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Greg Galling's 2022 JT Marine Incorporated scheme that we're going to see this weekend at Portland. I think this paint scheme looks okay in my opinion. It's cool to see that they have a new branding coming in. And of course, this also is Greg Galling's first start in the Xfinity Series with JD Motorsports really in a long time. I think it looks good. Excited to see on the racetrack this weekend at Portland. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Connor Mosak's 2022 Open Eyes scheme that we're going to see this weekend in his NASCAR Xfinity Series debut this weekend at Portland. I think it looks actually pretty good in my opinion. Very excited to see that they've got a sponsor. It's another Christian-based sponsor that's coming in. So it definitely is controversial, but I think it does look solid, and I'm looking forward to see on the racetrack this weekend up in the Portland area. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Kyle Busch's 2022 M&M's Music scheme that I believe we're going to see at the Music City race in Nashville in a couple of weeks. Pretty decent paint scheme, in my opinion. It's different than Kyle Busch's brand. I like they're changing up for Nashville. We're probably going to see a lot of different variations of schemes when we do go to Nashville. I think it looks good, and I'm looking forward to seeing on the racetrack not this week, but later this year in Nashville. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is My Slider's 2022 Treetop scheme that we're seeing this weekend at Portland. Very awesome that My Slider has a new sponsor that's willing to work with them. It's always great to see they have a new company that's coming in, especially for the future of sport. I think it looks good. I'm looking forward to seeing the racetrack this weekend at Portland. And the final paint scheme we are taking a look at is Blaine Perkins' 2022 Warrior Health Foundation scheme that we're going to see in the Truck Series race at Worldwide Technology Raceway. Overall, I do think this paint scheme is okay in my opinion. I don't like some of the things on it, but it's good to see the new sponsor coming into play. I think it is a St. Louis-based sponsor, so at least that's a positive, and I'm glad to see that they have a new sponsor for Blaine Perkins. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the Worldwide Technology and the Portland purses for this weekend. So, for the Cup Series race at Worldwide Technology Raceway Gateway, the purse is going to be $7,013,085. For the Xfinity Series race at Portland, it's going to be $1,258,443. And then for the Truck Racing Gateway, it's only going to be $696,198. No surprise here, trucks is the least, and of course, the Xfinity Series I think has almost a little more than they usually have. They usually have like 1 million to 1.1 million. They're actually a little more than normal. I think a lot of it is because they're traveling out to the West Coast. They're traveling all the way up to the Portland area, and then of course with the Cup Series race being $7 million, that's with all the charter money and stuff. So it's not a major surprise that basically the money purse is that much, and it really isn't a major surprise, to be honest with you. And now we're going into on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Goodyear. As it was officially announced that Goodyear is going to return as the official tire supplier of the SRX. Goodyear was the official tire supplier last season, and there have been a lot of questions in regards to the future of if they were going to be returning as the official tire supplier of the SRX. Well, like I said, we have confirmation yesterday that that is going to be the case. Overall, I think it's great that Goodyear is stepping up to the plate once again, and it's basically becoming an official tire supplier. They, of course, believe work in NASCAR. They don't work, I don't think, we knew with Firestone works in IndyCar. I think they also work at F1, if I'm not mistaken. But I think it's cool to see that Goodyear is still stepping up and sponsoring different companies. Well, let's just hope at this point that they don't have any major tire failures, because tires have been a major concern for this series and all the series very, very, very recently. And now we're going into on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Nashville Super Speedway. Now, I want to give a big shout out to Danny B. Talks, also Danny Baldwin, who basically put out a major report yesterday in regards to some things that are going around with Nashville Super Speedway. He basically kind of reports that Nashville Super Speedway has announced several enhancements, including free parking and expanded parking, and they also, for inside the fan zones and the other areas like concourses, they will have broader free water refill stations at the track as well. One thing that Nashville Super Speedway really struggled with last year is basically quintessentially, you had a situation where they had a hard time getting people in the track because they didn't know that you had to basically prepay parking. So they had to basically delay the race last year to, I think, like 15, 20 minutes because they had so many people having a hard time getting into the racetrack because traffic was a massive, massive concern. They were able to get these issues sorted out. Thank God for that. And I do think we may see these issues, but the good news is expanded parking is a thing. That's one thing that's been really talked about this weekend for at least Worldwide Technology is the fact that parking could be an issue. That's why we're leaving when we go out to the track this weekend, why we're leaving extremely early, because we got to get there for all the traffic hits. I don't think it'll be a big issue tomorrow, but I know for sure Sunday it's going to be an issue. So I'm glad that Nashville's doing this. I think this is a great decision that they made. And again, I'm very happy to see that Nashville decided to make a very good decision in regards to that. I think being ahead of the game is really, really important. And now we're going into on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about 2311 Racing. Now, David Wilson was on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio, and shout out to Danny McFadden for reporting this. It was reported that David Wilson says that he told Denny Hamlin yesterday that 2311 Racing is 9 to 12 months ahead of schedule in its progress. I think that's a really good thing for David Wilson to say. Now, I will say 2311 Racing has definitely, over the last couple weeks, has really shown a lot of progress and a lot of speed. You look at 2311 Racing, they just won their second race as an organization at Kansas Speedway. They now have the same amount of wins as Trackhouse does. And they also have had some really good speed. Bubba Wallace had a lot of speed. But the one thing that 2311 Racing has generally been really struggling with is the fact that they've had major, major issues on pit road. For whatever reason, it seems like, especially with Bubba Wallace's pit crew, that pit crew has been really, really struggling. And if they're going to want that team to be much stronger than they are, they're going to have to fix the pit crew problems. So I think one of the biggest issues they've had is their pit crew has been a massive, massive issue. It's had a lot of massive problems. And if they're going to want to be a better team, get the pit crew fixed and sort it out. But if they continue to have speed like they've been having over the last 2 weeks, I think both cars can make the playoffs. We know Kurt Busch is already locked into the playoffs with his win at Kansas. Unless, of course, we do get 17 different winners, and he is the lowest, which I think he actually now is technically the lowest of the drivers that have wins currently at the moment, so he's going to have to pick up the pace and get some performance. But if luck can go on his side, I think he's going to have a good shot of being somewhat competitive, and hopefully we'll see them get an opportunity to improve that organization. And now we're going into on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Rickware Racing. As there was a reveal yesterday that Rickware Racing has officially joined the World Supercross Championship Racing Series, WSX Racing Series. WSX Racing Series is basically part of the FIM, and I believe 10 organizations are going to be part of that, and Rickware Racing has been selected. I don't remember exactly which driver was selected for the ride. I think it's going to be 1 or 2 people on that team. And quintessentially, they will basically have a team in the Supercross world. Whether like Rickware Racing and NASCAR or not, one thing that I will give Rickware Racing a lot of props about is the fact that they're willing to go out and try new things. Right now, they're competing in the IMSA, I believe in the IMSA series currently at the moment. They've been competing Asian Le Mans over the last couple of years. And also, they are technically part of IndyCar as well, where they have the 51 car, and that car has been somewhat competitive. The yesterday NASCAR program could absolutely be a lot better. I think some major driver changes, and I think y'all know what I'm talking about here, I think some driver changes would really help out their organization. But I think it's amazing that Rickware continues to make some big endeavors and make some big changes to the team. I think them going over and going in WSX, I think is absolutely amazing and absolutely incredible. And I'm glad to see that they've joined the WSX and are part of that organization. Pretty exciting for the NASCAR, pretty exciting for the sports world in general. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about North Wilkesboro Speedway. Now, it was reported by Save, this is one of the North Wilkesboro Cross Racetrack Revival. Yesterday, Bobby Labonte, well, 2 days ago, I should say, Bobby Labonte made laps around the North Wilkesboro track, becoming the first person to make laps at the track since 2011. The last time the laps were made around the track was 2011 before the track shut down. North Wilkesboro, of course, will be hosting racing here starting, I believe, in August, and it will be hosting racing up until November for the take away of the pavement and turn it into a dirt track for the officially repave the facility. They are putting, I think, some sealer on the track to make sure that the track does not really crack up. It's the same stuff they use at Atlanta Motor Speedway for years, and it's the same stuff that they use, I believe, at Richmond as well. They used to use at Richmond back in the day. I think it's really cool that Bobby Labonte made lots. Bobby Labonte now has the word that he's the first driver to drive North Wilkesboro in many, many years. I think it's overall amazing and really, really awesome, and glad to see that Bobby Labonte was able to make some starts at this track. And he will, I believe, also be racing some more of those races coming up here in the future, which I think is really, really awesome, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Santino Ferrucci. As Santino Ferrucci is going to be driving the December 77 for Juncos Hollinger Racing this weekend at the Detroit Grand Prix. And the reason is because Callum Isla has not been cleared to race this weekend. Callum Isla had a crash in the Indianapolis 500 near the halfway point of the race, and the doctors have not medically cleared Callum Isla to race this weekend. So Santino Ferrucci is known to be a really good super sub who's done really, really well so far in his IndyCar career. He's made 2 starts so far this year, had a really impressive race at Texas where he finished in the top 10 in substitution for Jack Harvey at Texas after he crashed on Saturday. And then, of course, he had that really impressive Indy 500 where he was in contention at points to lead the race and almost had a shot to win the Indy 500 and finish in the top 10. I think Santino Ferrucci is going to surprise a lot of people this weekend at Detroit. I think he's going to be a contender. I think he's going to make that Juncos Hollinger team a really strong organization. But I'm also wishing my best of luck to Callum Isla in his recovery. I think Callum Isla should be good to go in a couple weeks. And basically, the doctors just did not medically clear him. It sucks because Callum Isla is a rookie. He's a really talented rookie. He's shown a lot of promise this year, but he's also made a lot of mistakes this year so far as a rookie. But it's one thing a rookie will learn is that as time progresses, he will get better. I think it's good to see that he is at least getting better. Hopefully, his hands will be clear in the future, and I do hope that we get to see him back soon. But I think Santino Ferrucci will be somewhat of a contender, and I'm very happy to see that Santino Ferrucci is going to be back, is going to be taking over and driving that car. I think it's pretty awesome, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Joey Gase. As there was revealed yesterday that on Wednesday night, I should say, that Joey Gase is going to drive the 31 for On Point Motorsports in a couple weeks at Knoxville. This, of course, will be Joey Gase's first Truck Series start of 2022, and the first time in many years, this might actually be the first time, that On Point Motorsports is expanded to a 2-car operation for the Truck Series. Of course, Tate Fogelman currently drives the 30 car for On Point Motorsports. Now, we initially thought that Brennan Poole was going to make a start for On Point Motorsports at Texas. It seems like things did not go through, and now they have Joey Gase, who is an owner of the NASCAR Xfinity Series, making his Truck Series returns. He's made some starts in the Truck Series over the last couple years. I think it's a really cool opportunity for Joey Gase. Do I think that Joey Gase is an amazing driver? That's a question for another time. But I do think him getting an opportunity to race in the series once again in trucks, I think is incredible. Ultimately, of course, he'll have to qualify his way into the race, especially if a lot more teams enter. I don't know if there'll be last chance qualifiers or not for the event, but there's probably not just going to be him who's entered. There's probably going to be a lot of truck teams trying to qualify their way in, and it's cool to see they have another truck that's entering the field. The more trucks enter the field, in my opinion, the better it is overall for the series. So I think it's great to see that he is entering the series. I think it's awesome and amazing, and I'm very happy to see that he will be entering. I'm really happy that he's coming back and racing the Truck Series. I think it's great for the sport, and I'm glad to see that he'll be back in the series. I think, again, I'm pretty happy to see that he is getting a start in the series once again, to be honest with you. And now we're going into on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Raja Kuru. As it was announced, I believe, on Wednesday, that Raja Kuru is going to be making his official Truck Series debut this weekend and tomorrow at Worldwide Technology Raceway, driving number 7 for Spire Motorsports. I cannot tell you how exciting I am that Raja Kuru is making his Truck Series debut. For a lot of you who do not know, Raja Kuru currently drives for Rev Racing in the ARCA Series and also drives part-time for Alpha Prime Racing in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. In the ARCA Series currently at the moment, while he's not won a race here, he is actually technically tied for the championship lead and had a very impressive race in Charlotte where he had that really incredible save and finished third and was on the verge of potentially getting a runner-up finish if they had enough laps left because he was catching Corey Heim near the end of the race. I think Raja is a very insanely talented driver. The one thing, though, is he's never driven a truck. So what are my expectations for Raja Kuru? Honestly, I don't think Raja Kuru's going to win. I know that 7 Truck has been really competitive in the Cups and there, but I don't know if Hendrick Motorsports will have as big of affiliation with this ride. If this car has Hendrick Motorsports backing, I can see Raja doing extremely well. My question is, what does this mean for Raja's future? Does he get more starts with the team in the future, or are we going to see him run more? That's one thing there. But I do think him getting a start in the truck, really honestly, getting starts in the truck series is really good for him. Gets him a lot of experience, and I think Raja being a series is great. I think a top 15, top 20 is not the realm possibility for Raja. I don't think he's had any starts at this track, though, but I do think that experience of racing this year has really helped him, and I think in all honesty, in all seriousness, I think he'll be somewhat of a driver to watch for in the event, and I'm overall excited to see that he'll be racing and making his truck series debut this weekend at Worldwide Technology. And now we're going into the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the Monaco GP TV ratings, as they were revealed on Wednesday evening, and according to Adam Stern, ESPN got a 0.76 rating and 1.396 million viewers for Sunday's rain-delayed F1 Monaco GP. That is up from a 0.6 and 934,000 viewers last year, though that was on ESPN2, and that was also not on the Memorial Day weekend, where a lot of people were probably not going to tune as much as this year. Now, of course, I think those ratings would have been a little bit higher, but of course, you have to remember there was that really long extended rain delay that really started, and I did expect that people were going to tune out of the race and go watch Indy 500, and also, of course, a lot of people knew the Indy 500 was going on when they were still going with the race at the time, because remember, this race didn't get done until 12 p.m. 12 Eastern, which was about 45 minutes from the green flag from the Indy 500. I think MotoGP was a good race. Again, still the race, though, having huge increases in the ratings, having a really high number of people in the 18 to 49 demographic. That's one thing that F1's been really doing a good job at, is basically getting that demographic out there. I think it's good, though, to see the Monaco GP did get some pretty good ratings for F1. Not the highest they've had, but pretty good, solid ratings, in my honest opinion. And now we're going into the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the Indy 500 TV ratings. And honestly, they're not the greatest. According to Adam Stern, NBC got a 2.69 rating and 4.836 million viewers for Sunday's Indy 500. That is down from a 3.15 rating and 5.581 million viewers from last year, meaning that almost a million people watched a race this year less than it did last year. It is noted, though, that this year's race was blacked out on TV, though it was live on Peacock. There are a couple contributing factors to this. One, they had one of the largest crowds in Indy 500 history. I believe 325,000 people were there. Last year, they, I believe, only allowed 170,000 people. So there's 150,000 people right there that probably could have tuned into that, probably didn't tune in there. And then, of course, the blackout being a thing this year, unless you got Peacock, which probably takes away probably close to 200 to 300,000 people. So if you take away that, they probably still were down a lot of people, which isn't the greatest thing overall. And I do think people were out a lot more this year than they have been in previous years, which I think played a major contributing factor into that. Don't get me wrong, the Indy 500 this year I thought was absolutely an amazing race. You can't tell me that race was bad, because the race is absolutely really, really good this year. I just think there's some major contributing factors. Again, like I mentioned, I think there was that blackout this year for the Indy 500 this season, which does play somewhat of a big contributing factor to that. And it's not a major surprise Indy 500 ratings are down, but they'll almost be down a million. That's not great, but there are some factors playing into that. But I think in general, the motorsports world outside of F1 was down. We'll talk about that when we get to the Coke 600 TV ratings later in this episode. But I do think that did play somewhat of a factor in a role into the ratings being a little bit down for the Indy 500, to be perfectly honest and sincere with you. And now we're going into the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the rear diffuser. Now, there's been a lot of questioning in regards to the future of the rear diffuser and what it's going to be like on short tracks, because a lot of people have been calling for the rear diffuser to be off of the NASCAR cars, including some drivers. And Corey Joyce was talking about this on a Stacking Pennies podcast earlier this week. He shared some possible changes for short tracks later this season, which includes talking about taking the rear diffuser off. He says that NASCAR is working on getting rid of the rear diffuser and taking downforce off the cars when we go to Richmond and Martinsville. Now, right now, I think one thing about this car that's so far this year is that the intermediate racing and the road course racing, and I think the super speed racing so far this year have been absolutely on point. The biggest issue with this car has been, shockingly, the short tracks this year. If you look at some of my lowest rankings I've had for this year when it comes to the races, so far this year, some of the lowest rankings have been the tracks that have been the flat ovals. Martinsville was, I think, one of the worst Martinsville races I've ever seen, and one of the most frustrating races I've seen, because Martinsville generally is a track that puts on great racing. I think the rear diffuser had a major role into that, and I saw people calling for it to be gone. We don't know. Tires, I think, played a factor, but I think rear diffuser also played somewhat a factor, because it does create dirty air. And I go back to Phoenix and Richmond as well, and I'm a little worried about this weekend of Worldwide Technology as well, because of the potential of the rear diffuser playing a factor. And shifting is going to be a thing. Everyone's been worrying about shifting. That is going to be a thing this weekend at Worldwide Technology Raceway. But I think them considering getting rid of the rear diffuser, I think is a major thumbs up for me. If they get rid of that rear diffuser, I think it will be in a better position when it comes to the racing on these tracks. If they get rid of that for the short tracks, you got a perfect car. So I think the thing that's lacking is the shorter ovals. If they get that figured out, I think you got a perfect car. I do think the race at Martinsville later this year will be better. Yes, it probably won't be much warmer, but I think with the sun being out and because I think there was basically the lack of rubber on track did not create a second lane. The bump and run really didn't work, and I do think that there are issues with this car that can be fixed on the short tracks. We know that they've been a big problem, but I do think them already talking about removing it, I think is a really, really good thing. Again, I think they do need to remove the rear diffuser for the short tracks. I think they really need to do it. If they can do that, I think it'll fix this car going forward. I hope it happens, because I think it'll be great, and hopefully we will see them go ahead and remove the rear diffuser for the short tracks. I might be wrong if they don't do it, but honestly, if I am NASCAR, getting rid of the rear diffuser for the short tracks and the shorter ovals, I think is a top priority for NASCAR right now, in my honest opinion. And now we're going into the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Alexander Rossi. Now, Alexander Rossi, we know at this point, is not going to be returning to Andretti Autosport. So where is he going to be going for 2023? Well, one of the biggest cap secrets has been officially revealed. Alexander Rossi is officially going to be going to Air McLaren SV in 2023. I'm not sure if he's replacing Felix Rosenqvist, but it's expected to be driving the number 7 for the team. It is a multi-year contract with this team. Alexander Rossi, of course, we all know at this point, is a driver on the 2016 Indianapolis 500 and was a contender for the first years in IndyCar before, unfortunately, starting in 2020, really starting to fall off. He's had some good runs this year in IndyCar so far. At that point, he's looked really competent so far, but has generally been struggling, and we know he's been frustrated with driving for Andretti Autosport. Now, Alexander Rossi, though, I still think is a very, very talented driver. I know some people call him washed, but I don't think Alexander Rossi's washed. I think him losing his guy that he's had for a long time, he had some changes, the personnel changes at the team, and lost his race strategist, Rob Edward, a couple of years ago, which I think is playing a contributing factor in Alexander Rossi's struggles. I do think Alexander Rossi going to a new team and going to a new breath of fresh air, I think is a great thing for someone, especially like Alexander Rossi, who I do really believe need that breath of fresh air to really have a shot at being somewhat more competitive. I think that car's shown a lot of speed, the 7 car, especially Felix Rosenqvist. Now, the big question going around currently at the moment is, because there's a lot of talk about a third car, who's going to be in that third car? Is it going to be Felix Rosenqvist, or is it going to be Alex Palou? That's right. Jennifer apparently said that Alex Palou is being considered for the Air McLaren SP car, which I really don't think makes any sense. I don't know if that's going to happen. But I do think, but if Alexander Rossi going to team, you're going to have Pat Ward, Alexander Rossi on the same team. 2 really good drivers. Pat Ward, of course, a championship contender this year. Alexander Rossi competing for a top 10 in the IndyCar Championship currently at the moment. I think Alexander driving for this team, I think, is a no-brainer. I think he will be somewhat competitive this year. And honestly, I'm very excited to see what Alexander Rossi can do with this team in 2023. I hope we can do really, really well. I hope we can get the team a win. We haven't seen both cars be somewhat really extremely competitive. They were competitive. Both of them were competitive in the Indy 500. We'll see what happens, but I really hope and pray that I would like to see Felix return to the team, but there's a lot of rumors and rumblings that even Rinus VeeKay is being somewhat considered as well for that car. So we'll wait to see what happens going forward, but it's very interesting to see that he's going over to this team starting in 2023. And now we're going to move on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the Coca-Cola 600 TV ratings from this past weekend. And honestly, they're not too terrible, but they're not that great. According to Adam Stern, Fox got a 2.2 rating and 3.869 million viewers for Sunday's Coca-Cola 600, down a tick from a 2.3 rating and 4.061 million viewers. For the Fox broadcast races here, which we also noted in this, NASCAR averaged a 4.59 million viewers, which is up 10% over last year. First thing I want to mention is when it comes to just the Fox broadcast, they're not talking about the FS1, they're talking about the Fox broadcast. That includes the Daytona 500, which, of course, that race did not get rain delayed this year. That's the reason why, and also, of course, the Busch Clash being up as much as it was this year is another big key factor in why the ratings are up. So it's good to see that at least over last year it is up, but if you take away the Daytona 500, we'd probably be flat right now or maybe a little bit down. Let's get into a big reason why I think the ratings are a little bit down. The big reason is because of Game 7 between Miami and Boston. That event got 10 million viewers for Game 7, and I think hurt NASCAR a little bit near the end. Now, people, of course, started the race and watched the beginning and near the end, and people still could tune in later in the race and watch the end of it. And the race lasted like 6 hours as well, and some people probably got tired of watching. I didn't get tired of watching it, don't get me wrong, but I think the Coke 600 lasting as long as it did play at least a little bit of a contributing factor into the ratings being down a little bit as well. I thought, though, the race was really, really promising and very, very solid. And I look at this, for instance, while I think, again, the ratings being down a little bit is not a major factor. It does not affect the racing. I think people that did not tune into this race really missed a really awesome and a great showing. The next-gen car put on an amazing race. And I hope that more as the time goes on and the sport does well. So I think NASCAR, one thing they've also been struggling with is the lack of marketing. Now, they, of course, have been marketing this weekend of Worldwide Technology, but, of course, it's on FS1, and they've got Michael Waltrip in the booth, so what can you do right there? But I thought the race was really, really good. It sucks ratings are not a little bit higher, but, again, motorsports outside of F1 was down this weekend. It's not a surprise. It's disappointing, but it's almost 4 million people. It's not majorly down, but at 100,000 people, that's a pretty significant number of people down. If it was only down like a couple thousand people, we wouldn't be really talking about it. But fortunately, a lot of people did not tune in. I wish more people tuned into the race because I thought the Coke 600 this year was really, really solid and really, really great, in my honest and sincere opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Now, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. was on a good friend of mine, Casey Campbell's podcast yesterday, and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. says that he is in talks with JT Doherty Racing about returning to the team in 2023. And he hopes to, in the near future, have a contract done soon with JT Doherty Racing to return to the team in 2023. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. has had a topsy-turvy season so far. After finishing the top 10 in the Auto Club race, he really, really struggled. But over the last 4 points-paying races, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. has not finished outside the top 10. He's had 4 straight top 10s, which I believe is a record for the team. They never had 4 straight races where they have finished inside the top 10. And Stenhouse has been very consistent, where he has gone from being outside the top 30 points to being in the low 20s in points, sitting, I think, 22nd or 23rd in points. And realistically could get in the top 16 in points if he continues his really strong performances. Stenhouse, I think, also could be a surprise to win some races this year where I think he could win. And I think Stenhouse being a driver to continue to drive for JT Doherty, he can really make someone out of himself. He and Brian Patty have done really well together. He and Tab Boyd, who are also working together as well, have done a great job working together as well. And I think Stenhouse continuing to drive for the team really is a no-brainer. He's done an amazing job so far with the team. I think he absolutely deserves to be back at JT Doherty. I know some people think that Ricky Stenhouse Jr. should drive for the 10 for Stewart-Haas Racing, and he'd definitely be one of my first choices for sure to go to that ride. I think Stenhouse has done a good job, even though I still think Ryan Preece and John Hunter are higher on that totem pole for me. But I think Ricky Stenhouse Jr. has done, in my opinion, he's done a really solid and a really good job so far with JT Doherty Racing since drive for them. He's having one of his best seasons so far. And he's basically kind of different than last year, kind of basically opposite of last year. Started year off well and fell off. This year started off the year off bad and has been really going up. And I think he's got a shot to make the playoffs this year. Look for him to be a contender in Atlanta and look for him to be a contender. Then maybe this weekend he might be a contender and get a 5th straight top 10, which would be really impressive. I think Stenhouse has got a shot at making the playoffs this year, and I think he'll be a threat to contend for some victories going forward. He's been really solid so far this year, and I think he'll be a contender going forward. And now we're going to move on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Chris Buescher. Now, we basically have not talked about this kind of thing in a very long time, but Chris Buescher has unfortunately tested positive for COVID-19, and he will miss this weekend's race at Gateway. The person that will be substituting for him this weekend is a driver of 38 for Rickware Motorsports in the NASCAR Camp World Truck Series, Zane Smith. First of all, I'm wishing Chris Buescher a speedy recovery. He, I believe, is the first driver in the top 3 divisions to miss a race due to COVID-19 protocols. He will be, I believe, he is expected to be back here in the near future. I believe the next race he'll be back is next week in Sonoma, so he will not be gone for too long. So wishing him well in speedy recovery. But let's jump to Zane Smith for a second. A lot of you are asking, why is Zane Smith the driver who will be substituting for him in this race? There is a massive reason why Zane Smith is going to be substituting for Mr. Chris Buescher. The big reason is Zane Smith is the number 1 prospect currently in the Ford camp right now. And Zane Smith has been extremely impressive so far in the Camping World Truck Series. Zane Smith currently has 3 wins in the Truck Series this season, those coming at Daytona, Circuit Americas, and a couple weeks ago at Kansas. And sits currently 3rd in the points, 25 points back. But without the DQ right now, he actually would be your points leader by a pretty whopping 20 points right now over John Hunter Nemechek. He's been really consistent so far in the Truck Series this year. I think he's only had 1 or 2 finishes outside the top 10 this year so far, and has done really, really well to be out right now a championship contender in the Camping World Truck Series. And also, he has some Xfinity Series experience as well. Zane Smith, of course, competed in the Xfinity Series for Junior Motorsports and in 9 starts with the team. Had 2 top 5s, I think 2 or 3 top 5s and 7 top 10s, and a 10.3 average finish in the A car. Some people said he wasn't competitive, but I thought Zane Smith was somewhat competitive in the Xfinity Series and at points was contending for victories in the Xfinity Series as well. And I don't think that A car in 2020 was as good then as it is now with Josh Berry. I think Zane Smith getting an opportunity is really, really great. I'm excited to see what he can do. I think for Zane Smith, a top 15, top 20 would be really, really great. I know some people bring guys like Greg Biffle being available or Matt Kenseth, but I think if you're going to go with someone, Brad Keselowski also made the choice as well. You have to remember Brad Keselowski does play a major role, and he really likes Zane Smith a lot as well. You can see by his tweets he's really, really high on Zane Smith. And honestly, I'm really glad to see Zane Smith making an opportunity. I am wishing Chris Buescher well and speedy recovery. Hope he recovers soon. And I'm happy, though, to see that Zane Smith is making his official NASCAR Cup Series debut this weekend at Worldwide Technology Raceway. And he's going to have some experience from the Truck Series race as well, which I think will play a major factor in helping him out. And now we're going to move on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Road America. Now, there's a lot of talk about the future of Road America if they're going to be on a schedule. And you would think Road America right now would be in a good position to return, correct? Not necessarily. According to a report from Adam Stern yesterday early morning, he reports, and this is from an article that was built from the GM of the track, they basically says that right now we have an agreement with NASCAR through this year, and we've had some initial talks, but nothing's firmed up. He also continued in this and says that on driver access, it's an uphill push rather than a slight incline, which is really no real progress for the racetrack. This is not really good news if you're from the Road America area. Now, for a lot of people, no, Road America has been on the NASCAR schedule for nearly 15 years. The first race that took place at Road America in NASCAR was in 2010, and Carl Edwards took the victory. And I think Road America generally has put on really, really good racing. Another thing I think that Road America has done a really, really good job on is the fact that they bring a ton of attendance. I'm not sure exactly what the numbers were for Road America when it comes to attendance. You have some people saying that it was 100,000 were there, and you have some people that are saying that 250,000 people or 300,000 people were at the facility as well. They were saying huge numbers for the event at Road America as well, and one of the largest crowds. In fact, I think the more than any other racetrack that last year showed up. So the racetrack and the people and the track is really, really great. I really don't want to see Road America off the schedule, to be honest with you. I just think Road America is a great facility. And I think if Road America loses their date, it's frustrating. But I think if Road America does lose their date, what track does it go to? I think it's obviously the Chicago Street Course. I know a lot of people are talking about the Chicago Street Course rumors currently at the moment. I think that's one track that's being considered that could be a replacement for Road America. But I had to say this. I really do hope the Road America continues to be on the schedule going forward. It puts on awesome racing. I know the Cup Series race wasn't absolutely superb or sublime, but I do think the Cup Series race did put on a very solid and a good show. And I just think it would be really frustrating if they would not run anymore in the NASCAR, They've had a long-term contract with NASCAR. They've been around for 12 or 13 years. I really hope they can get a deal done. I still think there's a good chance they'll get a deal done because I think they want to keep this as the 4th of July celebration. Last year, I think a lot of people really were against them moving away from Daytona a couple of years ago, but I think them having it now and Road America taking over that 4th of July weekend, it just makes so much sense. You're up in Wisconsin area, you're an American country, and I really do hope they can figure out a way to get this contract sorted out so we continue racing in Road America going forward. I love the Road America. I think it's an amazing track. It's got a great facility, and in all honesty, if they can find a way to get the track back on the schedule after this year, even if it's just for the Xfinity Series and not for the Cup Series, I really hope they can do it. But in all honesty, I think they need to keep Road America on the schedule. The racing's been really good there over the years. You got a great track, a lot of different areas. You can have a lot of crazy strategies. We've seen field strategies. We've seen everything at the track. In all honesty, in all seriousness, I really do hope they do find a way to keep this track going and keep it on the NASCAR schedule. I think, and also you may be losing another Midwest race as well. There's not a lot of Midwest tracks currently on the schedule. You've got Mid-Ohio on the schedule. You've got Road America. You've got, of course, Gateway this weekend. Technically, Texas is not a Midwest track. You've got Kansas. You don't have a ton of Midwest tracks you really could use right now, so I really hope they can find a way to get this contract sorted out. It's a great facility, a great track, a track that I genuinely want to go up to. I've been wanting to go for many, many years. I hope they can find a way to continue racing at this track going forward, to be perfectly honest and sincere with you. And now we're going to jump on to the first of two major stories in today's episode as we're talking about Jimmie Johnson. Now, Jimmie Johnson, of course, very recently, during the Indy 500 media days, he had expressed interest that he's actually considering racing and maybe doing the Indy NASCAR double. He right now doesn't have a contract with Chip Ganassi Racing for 2023 in IndyCar, but he has said and expressed interest that he wants to continue racing IndyCar through the 2023 season, wants to race once again. Because Jimmie Johnson at points has shown progress here, but also has kind of taken a little bit of setback when it does come to his performance. But one of the big questions is what team could Jimmie Johnson run for? And one ride that a lot of people kind of been bringing up is the Project 91 Trackhouse car. Now, I initially thought that car would be a car for international drivers. Well, it seems like things have kind of changed. Because Justin Marks was asked by a fan during his AMA on Reddit, he was asked about Jimmie Johnson, and if Jimmie Johnson was interested in racing it in the double, would he let Jimmie run the Project 91 car? And Justin Marks says that if Jimmie Johnson does the double next year, that he will let Jimmie drive the Project 91 car. Now, for a lot of you who do not know, the Project 91 car is a third Trackhouse car. That's a car that's meant for international drivers. Kimi Räikkönen, of course, will be making his Cup Series debut in that car later this year at Watkins Glen, pending, of course, if no more than 40 cars do show up for the event. Kimi Räikkönen will be in the number 91 car. And the car was generally designed for European drivers from Formula One. But Jimmie Johnson, of course, is one of the greatest drivers, in fact, probably for a lot of people, the greatest driver in NASCAR Cup Series history. Jimmie Johnson scored 83 career NASCAR Cup Series victories, a 7-time champion of the sport, and has won major crown jewels, including 4 Coca-Cola 600s, if I'm not mistaken. He's won the Brickyard 4 times. He's won the Daytona 500 twice, and has won every major event that you basically can win on the NASCAR calendar, and is one of the greatest drivers in NASCAR history. They would absolutely let, and again, think about this too. I think Trackhouse is now more, I don't know if they're as much aligned now with RCR. I think Trackhouse is more aligned with Hendrick Motorsports, so I think Hendrick Motorsports would definitely go out and help out Jimmie Johnson and get this ride up and running. And honestly, I think it's cool that Jimmie Johnson is being interested and looking to potentially do the double. And by the way, he's not the only driver that's being considered for the 91 car. We know that Mark Saracen, he's interested in the car. There's a lot of drivers that are probably considering for this ride. Of course, this year, the only race that the 91 Project 91 car is going to run, of course, is right now at the moment. The only race they're planning to run this year is the race with Kimi Räikkönen in August, but they're wanting to run part-time. I think it's amazing Jimmie Johnson is considering. I know that Jimmie Johnson wants to do the double. He wants to be in a competitive car. And you look at Trackhouse Racing, too. Trackhouse Racing this year has been extremely competitive this year. You look at the progress, and the speed at that track the team has had. Rossi is a championship contender right now, sits second in regular season points, only 34 points behind Chase Elliott, and is one of only 3 drivers currently that has 2 wins. That being him, right now him, William Byron, and Denny Hamlin. And Daniel Suarez, while he's not won this year, has had a lot of mistakes this year, he has shown a lot of flashes of brilliance this season. And I think I think that Ross Chastain, having Jimmie Johnson there on that team, can really help their team be good for the Coca-Cola 600 as well. Yes, Jimmie Johnson has never driven a next-gen car, but I think if there's anybody that I want to see back in NASCAR, it absolutely is Jimmie Johnson. I think Jimmie Johnson would be a great addition to the team. I think it would be amazing if they could have him. I hope that he does do the double. I know that Jimmie Johnson at points has expressed interest in racing NASCAR. And again, I really hope that Jimmie Johnson does consider it. Justin Marks gives him a call, and I think he and Justin Marks have talked from time to time. I think Jimmie Johnson would absolutely accept the offer. I think Hendrick would really be here to help the team as well. I think that would be great. And I know, like I've already said here, I think international drivers are the main thing that they're looking at right now. But I think that Jimmie Johnson, if they give him an opportunity to race, I think Jimmie Johnson would take that opportunity. So I really hope Jimmie Johnson does consider it. I think he's a great driver. I know he's not had a great time at IndyCar, but I think having Jimmie Johnson back in his sport, especially all the accomplishments, I think everyone would welcome him with open arms, and everyone in NASCAR would welcome him with open arms. They still promote Jimmie Johnson, of course, on NASCAR websites, including J-Ski. They always talk about his Indy 500 run, and Jimmie Johnson still talks to a lot of people in the industry, including Dale Jr., he spoke to at the Indy 500, and I think it's amazing that Jimmie Johnson is looking to maybe come back to NASCAR for a one-off race like the Coke 600, and is looking to also maybe drive that car. I think Justin Marks, absolutely. If Jimmie gives an opportunity, man, please do it. It'd be great for the sport if Jimmie Johnson came back, and more people would definitely tune into the race for sure, especially some IndyCar fans who have been really accustomed to seeing Jimmie Johnson IndyCar. I really hope it happens that Jimmie Johnson does race that car and does the double next year, to be honest with you. And now we're going to move on to the final major story of today's episode, as we're talking about Hendrick Motorsports. Now, Hendrick Motorsports made a massive, massive announcement yesterday. For the first time in many, many years, Hendrick Motorsports is actually going to be entering the NASCAR Xfinity Series for 3 races in 2022 with the number 17, which is, of course, a homage to Ricky Hendrick. Basically, it will have the number 17, which looks very similar to that. They'll have 3 drivers driving this car. Kyle Larson will make the return for Hendrick at Road America on the 4th of July weekend. So a month from yesterday, he'll be in that car. Alex Bowman will drive that car at the Indianapolis Road Course later in July. And then William Byron will drive the car at Watkins Glen. This will be the first time that Hendrick Motorsports has entered the NASCAR Xfinity Series since 2009. Of course, the last time they raced in the Xfinity Series was with Tony Stewart. And guess what? They won that race. I think it's amazing Hendrick Motorsports is going to be back in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Now, I know a lot of people are not very happy about this move. But I will tell you why I'm actually not against guys from the Xfinity Series, Cup guys, racing the Xfinity Series as much anymore as I used to be. The reason is, I think the Xfinity Series drivers generally love having the guys from the Cup Series in the series. And another big reason why I'm not against it anymore, and again, I'm a little hypocritical as I used to be against this back in the day, but the reason I'm not as angry and frustrated about Cup guys racing the Xfinity Series anymore is because of the limitations. You have to remember that now there are limitations that the guys have. I think for the Xfinity Series, for any guy who has any Cup experience, regardless if you're a rookie or a driver that's been in series for a long time, you're only limited to 5 races a season that you can run. And I don't think it's combined for the series. I think that is for the Cup. For the series, Xfinity, you only can run up to 5 races in the season. So that's the reason why I'm not against it. And it's not like these guys are all running. I mean, Kyle Larson only made 2 starts this year. William Byron's only made 1. I think he's making 1 more start later this year. I think Chase Elliott is supposed to make that backup. But also, I think very interesting to notice, are they preparing this out of the Junior Motorsports group, or are they going to be running it out of Hendrick? I would assume they're probably going to build it out of the Hendrick camp. Who knows? But one star I think you're all going to be watching is Watkins Glen later this year. Because if I remember correctly, I think Alex Bowman and Kyle Larson are supposed, I think Kyle Larson, and I believe I'm not mistaken, I don't remember exactly, I think it's Chase Elliott, I don't remember exactly who's in the car at Watkins Glen, but I think Kyle Larson and William Byron, I believe, are going to be competing against each other, which I think that's going to be a great battle. 2 of the best road course racers in the field are going to be competing as well. We know also that Kyle Larson is going to be competing at Darlington. And again, it's only 3 starts that Kyle Larson's made. And Kyle Larson has not raced in the Xfinity Series since 2018 before this year, so can you really blame them? And honestly, I think it gives them help, and I love a lot of people say, well, this should be banned. Well, they should also ban Joe Gibbs Racing for racing Xfinity, since basically they use that as a test for the Cup Series. But I will say this when it comes to Hendrick Motorsports entering the Xfinity Series, I think it's a great thing for Xfinity. And I hope maybe, just maybe going forward, this could play a factor into something major too. Think about this. Rick Hendrick has a partnership with Junior Motorsports in the Xfinity Series. He actually is a part owner of Junior Motorsports. I'm wondering if maybe Dale Jr. is maybe going to make the move next year. I think that this could be a really big start to maybe potentially creating an opportunity and a possibility for this Hendrick Motorsports Open Up Xfinity Series program and Junior Motorsports to maybe, just maybe, without Hendrick being on as the owner, they can still get the Hendrick engines and all the Hendrick parts and pieces, but no more Rick Hendrick as an owner. This could play a factor getting Junior Motorsports up in the Cup Series long term. I think there's a lot of major factors that are playing a role into this decision, and I think it's a very big possibility that, again, I think one of the biggest reasons why is because of the fact I think they wanted to get some of these guys from Cup Series a little bit of experience. So the Cup cars are much different than the Xfinity Series cars now. They're not the same thing anymore, but I think they want to get that notoriety in the Xfinity Series to grow a little bit more as well. Yes, it's probably less racing for the Xfinity Series guys to win. We've already had a lot of winners in Xfinity this year. I believe we've had 7 guys locked their way into the playoffs this season so far. I don't know if we'll get one this week, and maybe we'll have to wait and see. But it's not like they're entering many, many races this year. The Cup guys are entering. And I know we've had Cole Custer and Tyler Reddick win this year, but Tyler Reddick, of course, won Big Machine Racing, and Cole Custer won with the 07 of SS Greenlight Racing, so he really wasn't an official. I think that was more of an SHR built car, though, but I think in all seriousness, I don't see a problem with the limited. Again, if they didn't have the limits, I'd probably be angry about this. And yes, it probably, a lot of people think about Kyle Busch, but honestly, I wasn't even mad about Kyle Busch racing the longer I became a fan. I don't get as mad about Kyle Busch, as mad with Kyle Busch running the truck series anymore. I don't get as frustrated about it anymore. And I think some of these guys really love the Cup guys scene. And look at some of the guys that have come from the Xfinity Series, by the way. Some of those guys have really done incredible. Look at Ryan Blaney, look at Chase Elliott, and Kyle Larson, too. Do you think they'd be as good if they had, do you really, again, though I will say with the new car, everything's changed, but you think those guys would probably be as good as they are without some of those Cup guys being serious? I don't think so. I think it's cool that Hendrick's entering the Xfinity Series. I think they will all be contenders for wins, and I think we'll see at least one of these guys get a victory this season in that car. So, anyway, that is it for today's long NASCAR and new other motorsports video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notification on so you're notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on pages while list schedule below over that, and comment your thoughts on today's episode. What are your thoughts on Hendrick Motorsports returning to the NASCAR Xfinity Series? Do you think do you think they'll actually be competitive or not? Let me know in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about all the other stories, including we talked about today's episode, including Jimmie Johnson being considered for the Trackhouse car? Let me know in the comments below. The next couple of days, I'm going to be at the racetrack. Of course, I've already announced this already on the channel, but I'm going to be at the racetrack the next couple of days. I'll be there on Saturday and Sunday. If you see me at the racetrack, definitely stop by and say hello. I'm going to be getting there early due to the traffic concerns. I'll be there all day. I'm bringing a buddy around as well, and I might be vlogging the trip. I'm not confirming this or not, but I will have videos coming out those 2 days of the victory celebration once the checker flag hits. I'll see you guys there, and I'm really excited to get that out. I will not have a race to be on Sunday because I'll be at the track, but I will tell you guys I'm really excited to be out there this week, and I cannot wait to be there. So anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video, and I'll see you guys next time for some more great, awesome NASCAR and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.